Most of the Philippines' leading companies have succeeded thus far catering to local demand. But how are they doing in the ASEAN space amid regional economic integration? Our next guest is the author of ASEAN Champions, Emerging Stalwarts in Regional Integration. Professor Jamo Francisco of the Asian Institute of Management joins us now from our Rockwell studio in Makati ahead of the launch of his book, already available online. Thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations, Jamo.
Thank you, Cathy.
So you've analyzed top-performing companies in the region for your book, and among them, 12 of the most successful Philippine companies. What have you found about the critical success factors that differentiate Philippine firms from those in the ASEAN?
Right. Maybe just a little qualifier on that statement. In assessing these champion firms, we were looking at their performance from 2000 up to around 2014, 2015. And as you said, 12 of these firms are Philippine firms. And most of these firms actually are pretty old, which is quite unique for the Philippine economy. In many of the other Asian countries that we looked at, the companies tend to be much newer. Now, that's a telltale sign that a lot of these companies have depended largely on being pioneers in their industries. That's why if you notice, you have a lot of utility companies, you have real estate, right? You have education and power, which means that it took decades for a lot of these companies to reach the level of success where they are in now.
Yeah, we're seeing a list of those companies, 12 of
Sure.
them, old economy companies, really, as you mentioned, utilities, power. So in this
Right.
new economy setup, how can they compete? What have you found out?
Yeah, essentially, in the past, their success had really been about filling those institutional voids or gaps and infrastructure gaps, physical infrastructure, social infrastructure. Now, the problem or the challenge is that as these gaps are being filled, we're now 2017, we're entering a digital era. If these companies are still in the old economy and the solutions that they provide are still old economy solutions, the challenge now is how do we go digital? And it's a twofold problem because not only do they have to consider how do you go digital, but how do you go digital in the context of a more integrated ASEAN.
So are you saying that the makeup of their business actually limit them, or are they able to go around that in the ASEAN region, or do they have to change
Sure.
the whole concept of their business?
Right. These companies had to adapt. Right? The conditions that they were in were less than perfect. And the ways that they adapted, the success in their adaptation actually has made them what they are now. Whether that's dealing with government, whether that's working with less than perfect markets, if you want. Now, this is a new era. So to speak, they have to do what they did 20, 30 years ago again. Which really paints a picture of, I don't want to say it's cynical or negative, but it just means that they had that success before because of adaptability, of making sure that they can adapt to the growing economy that they are in and growing with the times. They have to adopt the same thing now in 2017.
Maybe we could look to a model in the ASEAN. How might they be able
Sure.
to compete more effectively? Is there a model example of an ASEAN company that's just as local in the regional space?
Right. Actually, for now, not yet, right? And that's a challenge because you have all of these ASEAN champions. Like, for example, there's an example in Indonesia, Sumber Alpharia, which is basically the company behind the Alphamart stores. In Indonesia, they were very successful because they had to work with those infrastructure gaps. Traffic was bad, so it will be difficult for people to get to supermarkets. So what they did is they brought the supermarkets to the rural and the semi-urban situations very close to their homes. Now, they actually tried to go here in the Philippines, and the success hasn't been as great as it was in Indonesia. Now, what does that say? It tells us that the success factors which made them successful in their home countries cannot be laurels which they bring to a different ASEAN economy and assume that it's going to work in that ASEAN economy as well.
What if
so
we
they
talk
really
about
have to
the
relearn
reverse?
Everything.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk
Yeah.
about a Philippine
Sure.
firm that survived here, survived the slow internet, huge traffic, can they actually go around and make a way and find a way in the ASEAN to go around these stumbling blocks because it's been so terribly bad here?
Right. Right. Well, immediately they have that competence because there's that ability to adapt to the, as you said, the less than perfect internet and what so forth and so on. The thing is, many of the champion firms we have now cater mostly to the domestic market. Same for a company like, for say, Jollibee, which is now dreams of going outside and being one of the top 5 food companies in the world. Now, the lessons they learned here in terms of, as you mentioned earlier, deep localization, of understanding local tastes, of understanding local behaviors, they have to adapt that capability when they try to go to Vietnam, when they try to go to China, for example. Less relying on the knowledge they actually learned here, but more on the capacity and that attitude, if you want, of adapting to local tastes.
Yeah, I was just speaking with Ernesto Tanmantiong a couple of days back, and he said he was going to take Smash Burger from the regional space in the U.S. to the national level so they can learn more about the U.S. markets and then take the brand global and bring Smash Burger to the Philippines. What do you make of that strategy?
That makes perfect sense. Actually, every single ASEAN firm, Philippine-based, Indonesian-based, Malaysian-based, would now have to learn how to globalize. That's a challenge because although ASEAN Champions, the book, lists down what the success factors have been for these companies to do well in their local economies, plus 2 or 3 perhaps, it might take a different set of strategies to go global, right?
All right, pretty interesting. And all the best to the book launch later today. Much appreciate the time and the sharing there. Jamu Francisco of the Asian Institute of Management, author of ASEAN Champions, Emerging Stalwarts in Regional Integration.